Welcome back. You got Will and Iman here from the Block Runner, MetaZone, Rovi, and MScribe. And today we're going to be talking about Unisat's BRC20 swap.
Swap, dude.
Swap session.
Unisat has become Uniswap, essentially. And if you know what Uniswap is, it was the darling of the last DeFi renaissance period on Ethereum, right? Remember when we first heard about Uniswap?
Revolutionary, dude.
Yeah.
A decentralized exchange.
It was an automated market maker where, users could contribute liquidity and be rewarded for that. And now we had these rich token environments that we didn't have before, right?
Yeah.
Before we had to depend on these wonky ass centralized exchanges. You don't know if you could trust them.
Right.
You always had to surrender your identity to them. You're like, damn, dude, I wonder what they're doing with all that information.
Right.
Whatever. I guess we're trusting
Let's make
them.
money.
Yeah, as long as we're making money, you guys can have whatever you want, right? So,
right.
in the decentralized universe, Uniswap came around and changed the game.
At one point, Uniswap was doing more volume than Coinbase.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever beat Binance though.
I don't know either. Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But they got up there for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what happened and a lot of what kickstarted the last bull market was enabled because of Uniswap. Like a whole shitcoin economy emerged because now anybody could feasibly launch a token with like some mechanism to attract liquidity to it. And that in itself was enough to like kickstart an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And we saw that like become like a rampant mania, right? DeFi, yield farming, food tokens, all this stuff.
Yeah, there was all kinds of people launching tokens off of DEXs. It was like a DEX launch. What's it called? The DEX ICO?
IDOs?
IDOs, yeah.
Yeah, initial DEX offerings.
There you go.
Yeah, it became a whole damn thing, right? And we watched all that kind of like roll out, and we saw like these little early indicators and signs. Like, you know what? These are like ingredients for the next. Yeah,
because we were having a debate on whether or not the whole ICO mania would happen again. Yeah. And then we discovered IDOs. I was like, I think it's going to happen again.
Correct. Yeah, and the big enabler of all this was, of course, Ethereum's smart contract and programmability layer or components within that protocol, right? So the developers, obviously, they figured out how to maximally leverage that technology and create these products and primitives and stuff. And, of course, multiple billions of dollars later, Ethereum, is what it is because as a result. So, so here we are on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
How do we recreate some of those same like mania mechanisms on a much less technically capable platform such as Bitcoin?
Yeah, I asked you, like, what's the motivation to create a BRC20 swapping when maybe the volume and liquidity isn't all there yet? And your response was, well, it's one of the primitives to eliciting a mania.
Yeah, it's kind of like you enable these tool sets to bring in the liquidity.
That's right.
You don't kind of like wait for the liquidity to arrive in absence of these tools, these mechanisms.
Yeah, because
they won't come.
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, we've obviously seen that. BRC20s was a great kickstart experiment. Really initialized like the collective understanding. Like, yeah, you could build something of value on top of Bitcoin.
Yeah, there are more BRC20 inscriptions than anything.
Yeah, SATS.
Because of SATS. Yeah.
Shout out SATS. As soon as SATS minted out, like the whole inscription like fell off a cliff. Like the rates of inscriptions.
Yeah, we got stuck at 35 million.
Yeah, I think we're at 36.5 now. So it's it's starting to pick up again. But still, tokens are incredibly important. And so there's a few things that make them even more important down the line is, of course, functionality and robustness to these tokens and then liquidity.
Yeah.
Very important, necessary components. If we're going to build anything of substance on top of Bitcoin, these things need to be figured out, right?
All right, so let's take a look at the modular proposal by Unisat. So it says, the proposal describes a modular mechanism for BRC20s. A modular mechanism provides a new approach to support various inscription-based applications within the existing BRC20 framework. Modules operate independently of each other, and each indexer only needs to parse data relevant to their interested module while still maintaining BRC20 balance consistency with other indexers.
Interesting.
So they have what they call a black and white module approach. So black modules only support deposits and do not support withdrawals, whereas a white module can support withdrawals but require that all indexers support the module mechanism and implement the consensus algorithm for this module. So we have this this method where if you want to create sort of like a meta protocol BRC20, and you want indexers to support it, you have to have like the indexers index your token. But when you want to swap them, then you need to send these tokens to a black module. And whereas you can't extract, and then you have to wait for somebody to say, hey, I want those tokens, but I'll send you these tokens, these other tokens, right? I'll send you ordi for SATS.
Okay.
And so you have to someone has to send tokens to the black module, and then you have to wait until somebody wants to trade your black module tokens for the actual asset that you're waiting for.
So this is like some sort of balancing mechanism, essentially, to make sure like there has to be enough demand for, I guess, token deposits in order for you to withdraw your value out of these basically silos.
Yeah.
You can relabel these black, what do they call them? Black modules?
Yeah.
As independent siloed ecosystems that still have some sort of like communication layer between them.
Yeah.
But it's more like a consensus thing. Like whatever this decentralized, quote unquote, network of indexers, they all have to come to some sort of consensus to kind of like onboard a silo into this network of silos.
Yeah.
To kind of like recognize and validate all the activity and the transactions that are happening within them, right? Because theoretically, this is permissionless. Anybody could spin up a module.
Correct.
And a module is what exactly? It's like
it's basically an inscription where it allows you to leverage the module's protocol to be able to send tokens to that module.
So you can like custom create any module, because Unisat's deploying their own module, kind of like showcase this architecture, and it's the BRC20 swap module, right? Which they came up with their own custom, I guess, coding framework to enable these, liquidity pools and the swapping of tokens and such. So this is the reference source code, I guess, that all these indexers can kind of point to.
Yes.
If they wanted to like validate what's happening on this module. Right?
So let me read the section. In the module, users can generally only use the tokens they have deposited. Users can interact with the module using inscriptions or any other feasible method. So basically, think of a module as like a website, right?
Okay.
You deposit your tokens on the website, and now you can use the website's functionality for whatever it is. It could be gambling, could be a game, could be anything.
Cool.
And you use your tokens, your BRC20 tokens, to spend, purchase, earn, whatever it is that's happening on that website. And it's all kind of like off-chain, handled off-chain.
Right. So whenever you're on that website and you're spending your deposited BRC20 tokens on whatever that activity is, the indexers like Unisat, they don't know. They're not paying attention.
That's right.
Until what?
So it seems like a black module can transform into a white module once accepted by all indexers.
All of them did.
But a white module cannot transform back into a black module. Consensus can be reached by a vote of all participants to decide whether a module created from a source inscription should transform into a white module.
See, this is where it gets a little like shaky and squirrely from my perspective. Is like these are, because we've seen this a lot, where it's like you kind of like paint this vision of I guess orderly governance mechanisms and stuff.
Yeah, everyone tends to use this whole governance reliance as if governance has shown to work, like in a general sense.
Yeah, I guess across the board.
Across the board, yeah.
Anytime where it's like a human being reliant governing platform, they always tend to gravitate towards corruption and and biases and like definitely non-following of rule sets.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, it just seems to be how human beings are. We tend to act in greedy capacities.
Yeah, it's based on incentives. If someone pays you to say vote this way, you're gonna vote that way because you just got paid.
Yeah.
Right. So corruption.
Yeah, I mean, it really is the only way though for them to even like feasibly try and put like a decentralization ethos spin around this, because otherwise, I mean, if you say like what it actually is, I mean, these are just like centralized database servers, right? Like that are kind of keeping track of all this stuff. And if, we have to rely on that and rely on and trust them that they're actually, recognizing the right stuff.
But it makes sense to a certain extent because a lot of people are going to invent, websites, right? Modules. And once a website or module gets a ton of traction, then it has some sort of incentive for all the indexers to see what's happening, to like make what's happening public.
So what is that incentive, you think? It's just somebody invents a new module, they build an ecosystem around that, and then all the indexers kind of from the outside observe that this traction has been generated. Well, why do I want to support that?
Well, if you're an indexer, it seems that you want to support anything with traction because there's a chance that developers are going to want access to that information. And if you provide that access via an API call, then there's a chance that you'll get users using your indexer and therefore potentially revenue.
Okay, so in the game of indexers, the world of indexers, all they're looking for are pings, API pings, right? So it's a competitive space essentially.
Yeah.
You want to be like first to market, I guess, and
the competition is based on speed, reliability, accuracy.
Yeah.
All these things that you want to service the developer community.
Yeah. I mean, for this to work out, it sounds like you're going to need to add in more layers, I guess, of like reputation layers, stuff like that, like all the things that track these indexers and keep them honest, right? Maybe like slashing mechanisms if like an indexer not necessarily acts maliciously, but maybe just negligently and like, indexes information incorrectly.
I feel like for something like that, I feel like the invisible hand is going to take over, because if you are accessing an API from an indexer that doesn't have accurate data, too slow, whatever, the developer would just use someone else's API.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah. So all the incentives, I guess, are just already naturally kind of like built into this.
Yeah.
It's like the ecosystem through like, I guess, free and open market dynamics will just kind of like self-sort.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, there's that. So we got black and white modules. So in the period, I think this launches tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
For Unisat, their BRC20 swap experimental module. So I guess it's going to start off in like a black mode, right? And then within these docs, they kind of say, we're going to let this run until the rest of the main indexers, which we've already been introduced to them, right? It's Domo, Alex Labs, and others, right? There's definitely like an industry of indexers forming. And as long as they are satisfied with what they're seeing, I guess, then they will convert this into a white module. Right?
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It could be corrupted, right? If they decide not to support some black box that's getting a ton of traction because it
competes against
with
something that maybe they're, I don't know, making some sort of revenue from. Yeah, exactly. These are like the considerations, right?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, because like we've seen plenty of precedent for this to occur.
That's right.
Where biases form and then collusion occurs.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this definitely introduces a lot of new vectors for that potential, and I could see that as becoming like a main point of
contention,
scrutiny for this proposal.
So here's what it's like to deploy a new module. The lowercase inscription ID serves as a module's ID. You need to set the name, source, and optional initialization data. There's no character limit for the name. So it's a JSON structure. Protocols BRC20 module. Operation is deploy name. In this case, it's demo, source, the inscription ID, and I guess the initiation fee, initialization fee. And then depositing BRC20 tokens into the module. Okay, I guess you're sending it to that the owner of that module. And then, withdrawing BRC20s to the target address. So, all the links will be in the description just to kind of break this down, but it's a pretty simple read. Can anyone deploy a module? Yes, anyone can define the functionality of a module and deploy an instance of it. All other indexers will consider modules with unrecognized source IDs as black modules by default.
So I think for sure it's going to be really important to keep our eyes on what it is Unisat initiates with this BRC20 swap module, because I think that's going to paint the picture of like how this process is going to roll out for future module creators, right? What are the threshold indicators for like white mode acceptance?
Yeah.
So like what should you strive for as like a module launcher?
There needs to be some sort of like guideline as to how do you go from black to white?
There's definitely none.
Yeah.
And I think Unisat is going to have to live out that position of, proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
Showcase how the process works.
I think
for
it's,
others to follow suit.
It's hard to kind of set that guideline this early on.
Yeah.
So
without making it look like they're completely just controlling the whole thing.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's debatable whether or not they are, or whatever organization, the Layer 1 Foundation and such, you know. So
the other thing,
FAQ, right?
Yeah. So the other thing is, what are the considerations for using BRC20 SATS as L2 gas? So they're using SATS, the BRC20 SATS token, for the gas to enable this. So the justification for using SATS is wide distribution, fine-grained value measurement, and consistency with Layer 1.
Beautiful, dude. See, I really like this decision because they could have easily just, I guess,
creating a new token,
spun up their own Unisat token and, you know, deployed a like an airdrop module. Just again, prove that you can add these new functionalities to this mechanism, and like, I don't know, airdrop it to their existing user base, kind of like what Uniswap did, right?
That's right.
They didn't have to do all those extra steps. They could just create a smart contract and, you know, distribute their token to their user base, which was one of the biggest airdrops of all time.
There was.
I remember that.
It was huge.
It was good times, dude. Good times. But they chose not to do that. They chose to actually recognize something that has already occurred natively in the ecosystem, leverage like the fact that there was a 6-month distribution period for this token, and they're giving it utility.
Yeah.
I think it was great.
So what do you need in order to have the actual swapping protocol actual function? You need liquidity.
The function?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That would help. That would help.
Right? So will people receive rewards for providing liquidity? It says yes. Unisat offers 2 types of rewards. A service fee. Liquidity providers receive a portion of the swap service fee as a reward for their participation. And number 2, staking of LP tokens. So Unisat provides a farming mechanism enabling third-party developers to establish their staking models.
Right on, dude. So we're getting into degenomics here. Like, I can already like hear the foam like dripping from all like the collective degen mouth pellets. Like,
we're gonna see vampire attacks, food tokens.
We're gonna we're gonna see all that.
%.
Yeah. 10 million % APY, like yield farms that come and go like within minutes.
Yeah.
I can already see the madness ensue.
It says, can you explain how BRC20 modules work and why should we care? I heard withdrawals is restricted when in the black module. Can you describe the details?
So the next part is interesting to me too, because they ask about sequencers and rollups here. It's like, hold up, what do you mean? Like, where is this sequencer and rollup layer 2 that you're leveraging? And like, well, it's like we built our own,
right?
Which is fascinating for one, because there's not much as far as detail as to how this is actually executed.
Yeah,
but
this
nonetheless,
is a whole business in itself.
Oh,
the sequencer,
a whole industry in itself.
Yeah.
The roll-up industry. If you look back at Ethereum,
there's like 30 of them.
There's like a multi-billion-dollar industry kind of like setting stage to service exactly this.
Right.
And Unisat's kind of like single-handedly like, dude, we
did this.
We got this, bros. So I mean, I think this is pretty obvious. I mean, Unisat is facilitating most of everything here, I think, out of pure necessity, right, for their users. Yeah,
so here's another question. How do you make sure that it is accepted by all indexers and that there's a complete consensus? If some indexers have not accepted, how do you deal with it? To provide a more feature-rich experience, the current main indexers may show interest in implementing useful and highly reliable modules. This becomes even more likely when the source code is available through review and reference. In the ever-evolving ecosystem, an indexer is expected to communicate well with others and make decisions thoughtfully about supporting different modules. If it remains stagnant, it may find itself outperformed by newer counterparts and risk losing support over the long term. So the governance of BRC20 is a journey that stretches into the future. Unisat holds immense respect for other participants in the field and wholeheartedly supports the development of robust and ever-evolving ecosystem.
Fascinating.
So basically saying governance has to happen here, and we don't know how it's going to happen, but you better have some sort of incentive for us to go from black to white. So, yeah.
Interesting. So it's kind of like, hopeful optimism that, the ecosystem will sort itself out.
Yeah.
And because all indexers are like vested into like, the long-term sustainability and success.
Everybody's going to play well.
Correct.
Play nice.
That's the hope. And we're all crossing our fingers.
Yeah.
And, we're going to play along and we're going to have a lot of fun until somehow somebody kind of like really
spoils a pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, but to me, you know what? Like, this feels exactly how things are typically done in Web3. Like, everything really is like an experiment and like a wait and see moment.
Right.
You know, just like BRC20 itself. I don't think even Domo himself said like, this is just, I cooked this on a whim. This is an experiment. This might not work. This might fucking take off. And it did. So who knows? You know, this fits within the ethos of that, you know?
All right, so let's talk about the tokens that are being supported right off the bat on this BRC20 swap. SATS, obviously, Council. Shout out to the Council guys. Ordi, Meme, Track. Shout out to Track, Honk, Oshi. Look at that. Zbit, BTCS, VampX. That's your favorite token, dude.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Zero XBT or OXBT.
Shout out BitGod.
Yeah, BitGod. Texo and MXRC.
All right, dude. So that's a pretty solid list. That's a good, you know.
Yeah.
That's a good degen starting point, you know. So it's gonna be interesting to see what all these token, I guess, initiators do to like build incentive mechanisms around like LP.
Yeah.
Like people coming in to provide liquidity for these tokens. Who knows? Because now you could stake these LP tokens for additional rewards.
Yeah.
Depending on what these, you know, developers, creators end up spinning up.
Yeah, so functionalities include creating pools, providing liquidity, swapping, withdrawing liquidity, and LPs are subjected to a default fee of 0.6%. So all the links will be in the description. This is a good thread. Here's the inscription of a module, I believe. And let's see. Yeah, there's a Unisat's blog post. And let's take a look at what's happened over the past, I have it here, 90 days, 3 months. So SATS minting out, took a dive, and then BRC20 swapping was leveraging, or was
I guess,
SATS was being used.
I think that has definitely reinvigorated, obviously, like the value perception of the SATS token.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because that's a big deal. If this, again, experiments succeed and you know, people are swapping the protocol, obviously that means a lot of fees.
Yeah.
Are being generated and a lot of sats are being spent and whatnot. So this is definitely some beginning components of an ecosystem emerging. So we already know BRC20s is like front running as far, even though we know runes are on the horizon. Then we got Benny and Pipe out there, and then there's, you know, other feasible token, fungible token potential out there.
This is the first time that we see a BRC20 token adopted by another project and leverage. Well, I guess IMSO Chris is also doing the same thing.
Yeah. As expected, you know, they have such a large holder count.
Yeah. It's like 30,000.
Yeah, 30,000 plus. So you would expect something like this to occur, you know?
The Ordinals Revolution podcast also has a thread on this. Pretty good read. So this link will be in the description as well. But I think that covers everything that we wanted to talk about today with BRC20 swaps.
Yeah, so keep in mind, just keep an eye on it. This is another sector of potential, kind of like whenever we first discovered BRC20s, you know, there was a lot of question marks and whether or not this is even feasible.
Yeah.
Because we discovered BRC20s at like a $20 million market cap range. So it was, there was nothing to like lead us to
assume
that it was going to work
off, in
any way. And it did. So I think we're entering phase 2.0 of that experimental branching for this BRC20 space. And now, you know, let's introduce all these new vectors of degen, you know, usability, and let's see what happens. So we're definitely going to keep our eyes and follow how this flourishes.
All right, guys, that's it for us. If we miss anything, let us know in the comment section below. Appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you follow all our Twitter channels. There's a lot of them. And we'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.